The Prime Minister's Questions is starting at midday today. Let's preview it now with Tony Diver, the Whitehall Correspondent for the Daily Telegraph. And Tony, thank you for joining us this morning. If you were Sir Keir Starmer, what would you ask the Prime Minister?
Well, I think I'd be asking almost all six of my questions on Gavin Williamson, wouldn't you? I mean, the fact that Rishi Sunak has lost one of his cabinet ministers, 2 weeks into his premiership, and he's had to do it because of historic allegations about bullying, which Gavin Williamson denies, I think is probably the first thing that I would be asking today. And Labour came out pretty strongly last night condemning Gavin Williamson, saying that he shouldn't take any money as a severance payoff, and all of those various other arguments that we hear from Labour about government propriety and honesty at the heart of government. So I think I would start with that, and then I would start moving on to the budget. And of course, we know we've got, as you've just been talking about with Liam, we've got the autumn statement coming up soon. I would be looking at that, looking at the various different stories that have been trailed throughout the media, some in this morning's Telegraph, others elsewhere, about those increases in taxes. And I would be sort of putting it to the Chancellor, but to the Prime Minister, former Chancellor, that actually it was on his watch that a lot of this stuff went wrong.
It's interesting, however, how the Labour Party focused yesterday not on Gavin Williamson, but on Suella Braverman. They used their opposition day in the House of Commons to push a motion on the Home Secretary. They weren't really talking that much about Gavin Williamson. Has that story now sort of been pushed to the sidelines, given the Gavin Williamson situation?
Well, I think that story will rumble on only because Suella Braverman remains in government and Gavin Williamson doesn't, right? And the migrant crisis isn't going to get any better very quickly. There are still issues around detention centres. There are news stories coming out every day about what's going on in those centres and how the government's dealing with it. We also know that it's costing something like £7 million a day in hotel fees. So, I mean, I do think the migrant crisis and the issues surrounding Suella Braverman are a story that is going to keep rolling. Fundamentally, the issue with Gavin Williamson was not a policy issue. It wasn't about a crisis at the heart of government, something that had gone wrong, a ministerial cock-up. It wasn't about anything to do with that. It was about something he'd done in the past. It was historic allegations and the way that he'd behaved during the Conservative leadership race. So, no, I think actually that migrant story and the story of Suella Braverman will continue, whether or not she remains in post. I think it's something that the country and taxpayers feel they probably have a right to know about.
And fundamentally, what does the departure of Gavin Williamson mean for the unity of this government? Clearly the reason he was included in cabinet is as some sort of mover, shaker, enforcer, someone able to get legislation through. With that gone, does this majority government look slightly more wobbly?
Well, I suppose that's not his explicit job, is it? He wasn't the chief whip, but yeah, we expected that he would have some sort of role like that. The actual role that he was given, the Geospatial Commission he was in charge of in the Cabinet Office, I mean, it seemed to me, at least, as if he was given a sort of list of things that no one else really wanted to do as an excuse to give him a job in the Cabinet, and actually his job was going to be much more sort of soft power, soft politics across the party, doing that sort of managerial role, as you say. I think the big concern for Rishi Sunak is that we know that this guy's a bit of an operator. We know that he's able to get support behind him. We know that he's a experienced politician, and cut his teeth in the Theresa May years. He was the guy that was keeping the confidence and supply deal with the DUP hanging together.
Yes.
So, he knows how to straddle an uneasy coalition. Does Rishi Sunak now...
Well, Tony, I'm going to have to interrupt you there. We've run to the end of the programme, but really fascinating stuff with Gavin Williamson's role. As we were saying, the end of